My name is Claire Weston. I am 33 years old. I am a conflict mediator based in Portland, Oregon. And last Tuesday, I opened my email to find a message from a man I had not spoken to in 11 years. My biological father. Subject line: I need your help, please. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop, walked to the kitchen window, and stood there watching rain move across the rooftops until my tea went completely cold, because before I had even finished the first sentence, I already understood exactly what kind of help he meant, and I already knew I was the last person on earth qualified to give it to him. Some debts do not come with invoices. They arrive quietly, wearing the face of family, carrying the assumption that blood is a contract you never signed, but can never cancel. I spent 11 years learning otherwise. And this email was proof that some people spend their entire lives waiting for you to forget that. Growing up in Ashford, Connecticut, we looked like success from the outside. My father, Richard Weston, was a civil litigation attorney with a reputation that made other lawyers straighten their TIs when he walked into a room. My mother, Patricia, taught English literature at the private school 3 blocks from our house, the same school I attended on a family discount, which she never let me forget. Our home was beautiful in the way that certain homes are beautiful, curated, controlled, designed to communicate specific things to specific people. Bookshelves arranged by color, fresh flowers every Sunday, holiday cards sent before Thanksgiving. Inside that beauty, there was a system. My father called it standards. My mother called it expectations. What they were, I understand now, was a relentless audit of whether I deserved to be comfortable. If I scored well on an exam, my father asked why I hadn't scored higher. If I came in second in the regional debate tournament, my mother set the trophy on the counter face down and said, "Second place means someone else prepared better than you did." If I cried about anything, for any reason, they would exchange a look across the dinner table. A look that meant, we are watching something embarrassing. I learned to stop crying around them by the time I was 9. What I did instead was read. Legal briefs my father left on the kitchen table. Novels my mother had annotated for class. I read everything I could find, partly because books made the hours quieter, and partly because if I was reading, I had a reason to be still and silent, which was the safest version of myself in that house. The summer I turned 14, I made a mistake that in most families would have meant a conversation, maybe a consequence, and then forgiveness. In mine, it became something else entirely. I had been offered a spot at a summer arts program in New Haven, creative writing, 6 weeks, partial scholarship. I wanted it more than I had wanted anything in years. I filled out the application alone, found the teacher's recommendation letter in the office copier tray, organized everything myself. I was proud of that. I thought they would be too. My father read the acceptance letter, folded it carefully in half, and placed it on the table between us. Then he asked me when I had decided that his opinion was optional. I said I hadn't thought of it that way. He said that was exactly the problem. The program was overruled. But what came after the overruling? That was the part I have carried with me ever since. 2 weeks later, my parents told me we were driving into the city for what my father called a practical lesson in professional environment. He worked out of a Midtown Manhattan firm on alternating weeks, and they told me I would be spending the day in his office, shadowing his junior associates. Understanding what real ambition looked like, my mother made eggs that morning. My father asked if I'd brought something to take notes with. I should have read it for what it was, a setup dressed as an opportunity. We arrived at the Weston and Cole building at 9:30. The lobby was marble and glass, the kind of space that tells you immediately what it thinks of itself. My father spoke to the security desk while my mother stood beside me with a hand on my shoulder that felt more like a bracket than a gesture of affection. Then my father, said he, needed to go upstairs first to check something with a colleague. He told me to wait in the lobby seating area, the low leather chairs near the main entrance. 15 minutes, he said. 20 at most. My mother said she was going to find coffee and would be right back. I sat down. I crossed my ankles the way she had told me to sit in professional spaces. I watched people move through the lobby in both directions. Partners, paralegals, couriers, clients, all of them was somewhere to be. 40 minutes passed. I told myself the meeting had run long. An hour in, I told myself the coffee line was slow. An hour and a half in, I stopped telling myself anything and started watching the elevator doors with the focused attention of someone who has no cell phone. They may be entirely alone. This was deliberate. They had decided I was too young for one, a decision they revisited conveniently whenever it suited them. I had no building pass, no floor number, no name of a contact upstairs. I had the card of my father's firm on a small paper square in my blazer pocket, which meant I was sitting in the right building. But that was all. I went to the security desk and said I was Richard Weston's daughter and that I had been waiting for him. The guard called upstairs. There was a pause. He told me Mr. Weston had left the building approximately 40 minutes ago through the side exit, both of them, side exit. 40 minutes ago. I thanked the guard in a voice that did not sound like mine and walked back to the leather chairs. I sat down very carefully, as though sudden movement might make the situation worse. I pressed my palms flat on my thighs. I looked at the marble floor. I counted the veins in the stone until the numbers stopped making sense. Then the revolving door opened, and I saw my father step through it, my mother one step behind him. My whole body lifted with relief. For exactly 4 seconds, he was smiling. Not the expression of someone who had been delayed. The expression of someone arriving for the second act of something they had already enjoyed. My mother reached into her purse and produced a small notebook. She held it up, the one I had given her for her birthday, the leather-bound one with her initials, and said, loud enough that the security guard could hear, I told your father you would still be sitting there. He bet me $40 you would have gone upstairs to make a scene. My father spread his hands. She wins again. They were laughing, not unkindly, they would have said, not cruelly. They would have insisted, just testing, just proving a point. I did not cry. I had trained myself well by then. I simply looked at them both, at my father's open-collared ease and my mother's satisfied smile. And I understood something at 14 that some people never understand at all. This was not a lesson about the professional world. This was a lesson about their world. And in their world, my fear was a resource. My discomfort was a game. My dignity was a stake in a bet I had never agreed to play. I said nothing in the car home. I said nothing at dinner. I said nothing for a great many years. High school became a performance. I gave to audiences, my parents and everyone else. I debated, I excelled, I won, things they could display. I learned to give them the version of me that kept the household temperature manageable. And in every quiet hour I had study halls, early mornings, Saturday afternoons when they were at firm events. I read everything I could find about the law, not because they wanted me to. Because I wanted to understand how the rules actually worked, who had power, where it came from, whether the structure that had always been used to manage me could be used, one day, by me. I got into Columbia on a merit scholarship. I did not ask their permission. I simply told them. My father said he had expected Yale. I left for New York 2 weeks before I had to. And I did not look back. Columbia was the first place I had ever lived where my competence was the point, not a threat. I studied, I worked. I built something real with no one watching over my shoulder. Law school followed at Georgetown, then a clerkship, then a position at a firm in D.C. that specialized in family mediation and civil dispute resolution, a field I had chosen, I realized later, because I had grown up watching conflict weaponized and had decided to spend my professional life helping people disarm it instead. I was 22 when I stopped calling home regularly, 25 when the calls stopped entirely, 26 when I changed my number and told only the people who had earned it. My parents sent a letter through my firm's general address when I was 28, which told me they had gone to some effort to locate me. I read it once, filed it in a folder I labeled closed, and did not respond. I built a life in Portland with a therapist I trusted, a small but serious circle of friends, a practice with a growing client list, and eventually, carefully, slowly, a relationship with a man named Daniel, who had grown up in a household so different. from mine that listening to his childhood stories sometimes felt like reading dispatches from another country. He was the first person I told about the lobby. He did not try to explain it. He did not offer perspective or silver linings. He looked at me across the table and said, "That was not a lesson. That was cruelty with a story on top of it." I had known that for years. But there is a difference between knowing something and hearing it named clearly by someone who loves you. We build our life the way I had learned to build everything, with patience, transparency, and a shared agreement that honesty was not unkindness. I had not contacted my parents in 11 years. I had not missed them exactly. I had missed the parents I had needed them to be, which is a different grief entirely, quieter, more specific, and without a clear date on which it ends. And then the email arrived. The subject line was my first warning. "I need your help, please." My father had never typed the word please to me in my life. I read it eventually. Then I called my closest friend, Mara, who had known me for 12 years and had the benefit of distance and bluntness. Then I sat with Daniel on the back porch for a long time while he held his coffee and waited for me to think out loud. The message told me that my father had been forced out of his firm, not quietly. A former client had filed a disciplinary complaint with the state bar detailing a pattern of conduct that, once investigated, had led to 3 additional complaints from people who had been waiting for someone else to go first. His license had been suspended pending review. The suspension was not the end of it. Other things followed. Their social world, which had been built on reputation and proximity to professional standing, dissolved in the way these things always dissolve, gradually and then very suddenly. My mother had written separately through the same email, as a forwarded message at the bottom, as though she could not quite bring herself to address me directly, to say that my father's health had declined, that they had sold the house, that they were managing, she said, in that careful language people use when they are not managing at all. And then, at the bottom of my father's message, in a paragraph set apart like it was a different document, "You know the law. You know how these processes work. I am asking you, as your father, to help us navigate this. As your father." 11 years of silence. And the return was a legal consultation request. I did not call them. I asked my sister, Nora, who had maintained limited contact over the years, more out of inertia than warmth, to tell me what was actually happening. She said our parents had spent years describing my departure as an overreaction, a phase, evidence of a sensitivity problem they had always worried about. She said reading that back to me now made her feel tired in a way she could not quite explain. She had a daughter of her own now, 18 months old, and she told me that holding her child had changed the way she read the past. She said she didn't think she was going to be sending our parents Christmas cards anymore. I told her I thought that was wise. I told Daniel I needed to go. Not to help them. He knew that. Not to reconcile. Just to close something in person that I had only ever closed in silence. He said, "Whatever you need." He said it the way he said most things, without condition. I flew into New York on a Thursday and drove out to the suburb where they now lived, a rental apartment in a complex off the highway, a long way from the Connecticut house, with its arranged bookshelves and Sunday flowers. My father was smaller than I remembered. People always say that about aging parents, and I had never quite believed it until I was standing in front of him. My mother still held her posture. Some things do not collapse even when everything around them does. Neither of them spoke first. So I did. I told them I had not come to help with the bar process. I told them I had not come to restore contact or evaluate a path toward anything. I told them I had come because for 11 years I had carried a version of a conversation that had never happened, and I was no longer willing to carry it. My father said they had made errors in judgment. I told him an error in judgment is billing a client incorrectly. An error in judgment is taking the wrong exit on the freeway. What they had done to me, systematically, and with enough creativity and sustained effort that it required 2 people to maintain it, was not an error. My mother said she had always wanted what was best for me. I told her that statement was true in the way all incomplete statements are true. By leaving out the part that made it false, she asked if I could forgive them. I told her forgiveness was not what I had come to offer. I had come to be clear. There was a difference. And I suspected the difficulty they had always had with me was exactly that. I had learned, eventually, to know the difference between things that sounded similar but were not. My father asked if this meant we were finished. I said we had been finished for 11 years. What we were doing now was documentation. I told them I wished them adequate medical care and no suffering beyond what was necessary. I meant it. That was the full extent of what I felt. Not coldness, not satisfaction, not grief, just an absence, clean and complete, where something complicated had once lived. I stood up. My mother's hands moved in her lap. I said, "You bet on whether I would make something of myself without your framework." I did. You just aren't in the building. And I walked out. The drive back to the airport took 40 minutes. I spent most of it in silence, watching the exits count up and then down as the highway curved toward the terminal dot in the departure lounge. I thought about the 14-year-old sitting in that marble lobby, counting the veins in the stone floor, waiting for people who had already left through a side door. She was right to have been afraid. She had been abandoned in a place designed to make her feel small. But she had also done something that neither of her parents had ever given her credit for. She had stayed calm, asked for help, and then spent the next 19 years building a life out of everything they had underestimated in her. She was not broken by that lobby. She was clarified by it. If I have learned anything worth passing on, it is this. People who use power to diminish you are not teaching you about the world. They are teaching you about themselves. And what they are teaching you, whether they intend to or not, is exactly what to walk away from. A child who grows up learning to survive harsh conditions does not become strong. She becomes expert at surviving harsh conditions. Those are not the same thing. One is a skill set. The other is a life. The life I have now. My practice, my marriage, my Saturday mornings, my right to sit in complete silence without monitoring anyone's mood was not built because of what they did to me. It was built in spite of it. By me, for me, with people who earned their place in it. Real family does not keep score. Real love does not require performance. And real closure. I know this now does not feel like victory. It feels like stepping out of a room where the air was always slightly wrong, and breathing, finally, without noticing that you are.